their participation in your project is somehow attached to the benefits they derive from being one of your clients. Am I using the right word, client? Thank you. That those things are serious ethical considerations. You also have to think, and not every, your old-fashioned, positivist, objective type of researcher will not say it. I'm going to say it, and a lot of my colleagues would say it, is what are the outcomes of your research going to do to your population? Are you going to demonstrate something that can cause harm to that particular population? And that is something you need to think about. Yeah.
Who determines the ethics of the ethics board? Like, who makes ethics? Who makes sure that ethics board is ethical? And who determines harm? Like, what's the definition of harm? Because what may seem harmful in the short term is not actually harmful and has huge benefits for the whole community in the long term.
Absolutely.
And I have very specific ideas on what that is, but
the onus is on the researcher to demonstrate those long-term benefits and to make the argument they outweigh the short-term. But the actual ethics and what constitutes harm is set by the three big national academic funders. They're called the Tri-Council. And there's endless pages as to what is considered to be ethical research and what constitutes harm. But then it's left up to individual universities to interpret. And you get into ridiculous situations. I sit on research projects at Dell, where we each need to get ethics approval from our individual universities, one from Dell, one from St. Mary's. I've seen St. Mary's overturn Dalhousie and say that they won't give me ethics approval even though Dell has already done it. So it's really very much based on a local interpretation of what constitutes harm.
very subjective.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, obviously we're not like some of the questions are do you plan to administer drugs and how much? Now, obviously, these guidelines are for everybody, right, including the medical profession. So those don't apply to us, but where we get caught is in the psychological harm and causing stress. Yeah. So, what is that? Oh, thank you.
Oh, I think I was going to ask, in terms of the ethics, if we do a project with Metropolis, it always goes through the university ethics.
It has to. If there's a university researcher attached to it, it has to go to our ethics board. And now, the thing is, you could try not to do it, but if you get caught, you're in trouble. And if someone complains about the ethics used in the research, the university is in huge trouble. So let's say we do a project together, and not always, people don't always agree on collaborative projects on what the outcomes are, right? So your interpretation may be wildly different from the academic researchers, and then you could end up in a situation where you're arguing ethics. So as long as we've gone through the REB, the academic researcher is protected, the university is protected. If we try not to do it, we are exposing both ourselves and the university to pretty serious charges.
Can you give an example of where the outcome might be of harm to the population?
I can think of an example of where, for example, you have a collaboration between an academic research and a NGO and a community. That's often the way the Metropolis works. There's three partners, right? There's the community of interest, the NGO acts as the broker, if you will, and the academic researcher, where the NGO and the academic researcher vehemently disagreed about what the results of the project meant. And if it was published, could have done, from one perspective, harm to that NGO. From the other perspective, it was, no, this is fair game. And then you have to make a decision there. You know, do you want to do, it's not just immigrants that we're talking about in terms of who you can do harm to, it's any of your research partners. Yeah, so and it does happen.
Don't they set those parameters before they even go to this really research that this can come up? It is a part, because you can't determine what people will answer, so there is a possibility that the information you get back isn't going to put you in a positive light. Are you going to live with this? Don't they
That is something that's slowly but surely being more refined. Claudette and I wrote a chapter in a book on working with communities that looked at a lot of those issues, like what can you do to avoid. And one very not uncommon thing to do is when you publish an article that the editor agrees there's allowed to be a rebuttal at the end of the article where those that disagree with the findings say, we really disagree with this. And the only trouble is very few editors are going to want to get caught up in that, so we're just usually just going to reject the article outright.
It would be really one of my long-standing issues is that there isn't enough evaluative research, because that's especially program evaluation, because that's something that we really need to do. We're required to do it. It would be great to do it in a more rigorous way. I mean, but that potentially, I mean, any program evaluation potentially could demonstrate that a program that we may be offering may not meet its goals, and therefore, you know, is of a little use to the clients, and therefore should be shut down, and therefore could hurt those of us who might run or work in the program. I mean, you know, what do you do about that? That would almost eliminate any kind of evaluation research.
Decide that you're going to look at the information.
But if it's unethical, I mean, I'm just thinking, I meant in terms of causing harm, or am I going, am I over-interpreting what you're saying about
you're
causing
harm to the taxpayer.
Yeah. Well, you would be if you weren't doing that kind of
Yes.
research, because then you would be wasting.
Yeah.
You actually are
So
wasting
the thing is,
dollars.
the evaluation research that I have been involved with usually comes at when they're deciding they're going to potentially withdraw money anyway. So that you're at the stage of.
But that's way too late.
Yeah,
We should be doing all that.
No, but I'm just saying there's always that threat there, right? It's not as if, so the onus is really to try to demonstrate the effectiveness of a program. And I've done a lot of work with the Community Action Program for Children. And what we found is that it really depends on the questions you ask. If you, this has nothing to do with immigration, but it's a good example. If you say we're going to measure, are you familiar with CAPC? Yeah. If we are going to measure the effectiveness of this program by what babies weigh, how many mothers are still smoking, how many breastfeed, and how many hit their kids and get frustrated with them every now and then yeah, you're going to have marginal results. If you measure that program on the extent to which it creates a space for women, that's, you know, basically mothers, who normally would not have access to that kind of mutual support and collective capacity building, then you get completely different answers. And so here in Atlantic Canada, that's what we've done. We literally, for the last 10 years, refused to actively participate in the national evaluation because it asks those behavioral questions. And instead, we've created a whole new evaluation framework that says, you know, this has encouraged participation for a population that would normally not have an opportunity. And then the funders have a hard time, because you are then saying what's effectiveness. So you can do that for any of your own programs too.
You still have to have indicators though,
Yep.
of some.
Yep. And you could do it,
Success.
I'm sure that for a lot of your programs too, the actual intent is a reason to put it together. But so many other things happen because of that program, and that those shouldn't be considered to be anecdotal or, you know, spurious. They should be mutual support should be brought in as a huge measure of effectiveness.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not actually arguing. I'm with
Yeah.
Stephanie. If you know, we live with the results. If it doesn't work, then we say we're going to do this, and we implement a program, and it doesn't do it. Well, then let's not do it. Let's do something else. I
Yeah,
mean,
and yes, but that's an interesting question. Because
you know, I mean, if it's really going to evaluate it, I mean, it might take more than one study, or maybe look at different ways, or whatever.
of doing it, yeah.
But
I think another challenge for us is that sometimes we want to see different indicators than our funders.
Yes.
And so for us, the measures of success are slightly different from what they've asked us to accomplish or measure.
Are they mutually exclusive? Like, can you have